Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me tonight we have, as always, Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Evening.
To put it mildly, we've got a lot to catch up on because the last time we recorded was just after our historic double was completed over Cardiff City. So massive apologies to everybody that we've been away for so long. It's been a bit of a strange period. To put it into some kind of context, the last time we recorded, well, since then, Swansea have actually won 2 games, and it feels like a very, very long time since we last won a game. So long ago, actually, that we don't actually have time to look at the Derby and the Millwall wins. We're just going to skip past those and the Barnsley draw and go straight into Reading. Matt, we'll start with you because we could have skipped this one too, but I don't think we really could. How on earth do you go from being 4-1 up to drawing 4-4 against Reading?
It was an absolute balmy second half, really, wasn't it? I think once we scored the fourth, you thought that's it. Any sniff of a Reading comeback. I know at the time they were still fighting to ensure survival and try and cement their place in the division. But you just thought, when you get a few goals up against a team that are struggling right at the bottom, heads will go down, morale will be hit by that, and we look cruising. We were having the time of our lives out there, and it's just absolutely balmy that it went the way it did in the end. I think that would have been one of the standout results of the what we're going to talk about if it weren't for a game that came up 2 games later. We just thought it can't happen again, can it? But no, it was. I think that was just stupid because you shouldn't be throwing away 3-goal leads, but against a team that are struggling at the bottom. I mean, there's a lot of questions to be asked. I think, to be fair, Russell Martin did ask them after that about a bit of character, about a bit of lacking a bit of personality there, perhaps in defence, to make sure that we see a game out and not be stupid with it, which unfortunately we've said too often this season.
Yeah, absolutely. In fairness, Steve, like Matt said there, up until say Reading got their second goal, it was a brilliant performance from us. Some of our attacking play absolutely sensational. Some of the goals we scored, brilliant.
Penalty as well. Forget that.
We actually scored a penalty. I mean, it was a historic afternoon. It was all set up to be brilliant. And then, I mean, first time I think we've squandered a 3-goal lead since Wolves back in 2012. I mean, it's just not the kind of thing that happens very often, but it does kind of sum up our soft underbelly this season, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, but I think there's been a regular complaint throughout the season in some ways that we seem to have to work quite hard to score our goals. And I mean, you look at it, it was a lovely move, wasn't it, for the first one where Wolfers stuck it in the top corner, and then Perot has scored a great one from outside the box. The penalty, as we mentioned, and the fourth one was a great move as well. It was finished off by Obafemi. But then you look at the goals that we conceded. Now, in all fairness, the penalty that they got, soft to say the least. I didn't think it was one, but it got given, didn't it? But I mean, the other 3, once we're 4-1 up, I mean, they're just scrappy and it's crap, isn't it? And that's what annoys me. It's like we've gifted it. It's not like the opposition have really put us under a severe amount of pressure. We just sort of folded over some basic stuff like balls into the box. And I think that's what's really frustrating from my point of view, is that we did sort of just completely blow it. I mean, it was, it was ridiculous, really. It was against a crap side. I mean, got to look at it now. We conceded 7 goals against Reading this season. And obviously only got a point off them. I mean, I know in the end, with the way that we ended the season, I mean, we were a fair way off the playoffs. But, I mean, those 5 points would have made a big difference. And you'd argue that we probably should have beaten them twice. So, I think it's frustrating. It's definitely something we've got to work on, isn't it? And we'll discuss what we're going to do transfer-wise at some point. But, defensively, we've been weak on certain occasions. And we let ourselves down there, really, because there's no way in hell that we shouldn't have won that game.
Yeah, the good thing is that kind of collapse, is the kind of thing that only happens once in a decade. So, we got that out the way at the Mdiski, and don't have to worry about it for a while, do we? We'll get on to Bournemouth in a bit. Before that, a quick mention for Middlesbrough. Matt, this was a game of two halves. Really boring first half where nothing much happened. Absolutely kicked off in the second half and was, in my opinion, one of the most entertaining 45 minutes of football that we've had this season. It was insane.
It was definitely up there, wasn't it? Because I remember thinking at the time it was a case of anything you can do. I know they scored, we scored, they hit the woodwork, we hit the woodwork. You just thought, we didn't see it happening at half time, did we? As you say, it was a non-event that first half. And then we turned around about 15 minutes into the second half and said, what has happened at half time here? Because all of a sudden, this is just game has opened right up. It's end to end. It's frantic. It was, I think we should have lost it at the end. I think they missed that 1-on-1 late on, didn't they? Which really would have just nicked it for them. I take a point after the way the game went. But yeah, it was an entertaining second half, that one. I thought, as you say, very much a game of two halves.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, the goal for the Swans came very, very quickly after Middlesbrough taking the lead. Good counter-attack, but it was yet another goal for Michael Obafemi, who, might as well discuss it now, has had a fantastic second half to the season. And if he can continue his goal-scoring prowess into next season, and I don't see any reason why he can't, I mean, that we're going to have a serious weapon on our hands, aren't we?
Yeah, it's been really encouraging, isn't it, really? In the second half of the season, we found that blend, haven't we, up front with Perrault dropping a little bit deeper and Obafemi playing as the main front man. It's just worked really well. I think it's must have scored about 11 goals since about the start of February. I mean, there can't be many others who've got anywhere near that total, apart from maybe a certain Mitrovic at Fulham. But it's been really encouraging with Obafemi, because it didn't look great for a long time, did it? There were one or two rumours about what was going on behind the scenes, and quite often he wasn't even making the bench, and you're thinking, well, what's going on here? But now you'd have to say he's one of the first names on the team sheet, and what's going to happen with Perrault? I mean, we don't really know, do we? But the fact is, we may have potentially 2 20-goal strikers at the club next season. If we do, I mean, you're going to have a big advantage, aren't you? So, it's encouraging. And like I say, if we were to lose Perrault, then we at least have the encouragement that we've in Obafemi, we've got someone that we think might be able to score a lot of goals for us. So, yeah, that's certainly been a big plus point, I would say, from February onwards, has been Obafemi's impact.
Definitely. Matt, I joked about 2 minutes ago that, the kind of collapse we saw at Reading is something that only happens once in a decade. Bizarrely, it happened twice in pretty much the space of a week and a half. I mean, words fail me, really. Bournemouth, second in the table, chasing automatic promotion at the time. Obviously, they've gone on to do it now. One of the toughest teams to score against in the division, and we went 3-0 up, again with some lovely goals. I mean, let's just talk about what happened before the collapse first, because, I mean, this was another fantastic match to watch, and some of our attacking play, again, just brilliant and extremely clinical as well, it has to be said.
Yeah, I mean, it's that man again, isn't it? The man, it looks at this moment that we're actively trying to court him to potential suitors in the summer, purely because that's where we know a bulk of our transfer fund is going to come from. But he is such a fantastic goal scorer, Joe Perrault, that you cannot defend it. How can you? The guy will drop off. He's so intelligent. He'll drop off into pockets of space. He sniffs out the gaps. He knows when to drop in between the lines and allow. And I think that's what Steve was talking about, Obafemi's impact. I think that's helped the whole team dynamic. Is Perrault dropping has allowed us to have that out-and-out front man in Obafemi who can sit on the shoulder of the last man and make those darting runs. And that then drags the defence back, and it creates that pocket of space in between the defence and midfield, which Perrault just lives in. I mean, he absolutely loves it in there. And his second goal in particular, and he's picked it up and he's turned, and he just smashed it from 20, 25 yards, and the keepers watched it go past him. And the guy doesn't know how to miss the target from outside the box. It's a phenomenal trait. I find it hard to believe he hasn't managed to replicate this previously in former clubs. But he's just come here this season, and I think it's probably fair to say he's carried the team. The way he stuck the ball in the back of the net win quite often, and people have been analysing his season, Guto, and his XG is ridiculously low.
His XG for the entire season is like 0.2. It's like...
It's obscene. He should be a Dutch. Do you know what? Our Dutch ex-director should have had a point. But he obviously, Van Sweden in the end, he looks like he's massively got egg in his face for his comments when we signed him. But if you just looked at XG, you would just think he's obviously not going to make it. But he's phenomenal talent, and I think you can ask where he can go, where he will end up. I'm not 100% sure, but if we end up with him next season and we have to make do with that, then it's the worst situations to be in, as Steve mentioned. But his 2 goals, set the way. And after the start of the second half, where you thought Bournemouth were going to push back into it and come back into it, there was that fantastic counter-attack goal there where Cyrus Christie ended up sticking it in the top. I remember turning to Steve when he got the ball, and I thought, he's taking it too wide. And I thought he had. And he'd stuck it top corner then from an acute angle. And you're just thinking, then we're in dreamland here. You're not going to concede 3 goals after being taken a 3-goal lead. And then I remembered what we'd done a week earlier. So never doubt the Swans.
Yeah, and we know what happened next. Steve, I will say, I think there's no way of proving this. And obviously Bournemouth had created a fair number of chances before they'd got back into the game. But if Ben Cabango stays on the pitch and doesn't get injured, I'm not convinced Bournemouth can get back into that game. I thought we really did see how absolutely vital he is in this team. He is basically the only centre-back that we've been playing with for the last few weeks. And when he went off, I mean, Bournemouth went direct at the same time, threw on Kiefer Moore, Billing as well, who's a big guy, as well as being a very good footballer. But they could just lob those balls into the box, and they just pelted our 6-yard area and put us under pressure, which without Cabango, we just couldn't deal with, could we?
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder, from my point of view, if Ryan Bennett had come on, that probably would have made the difference, because I know obviously Martin has deemed him surplus to requirements, but I think that's more to do with his style of play rather than the fact that he is a man with ability. And I remember when he came on against Blackburn, for example, a lot of balls came into the box when we were down to 10 men, and he was heading a lot of them out for fun. So I think if he'd come on, that would have made the difference. But I mean, if I'm honest, I wasn't as annoyed after this one as I was with Reading, because I mean, as Matt has already said, that 3rd goal was very much on the break. And if we're honest, Bournemouth were all over us, and they've got a lot of good players, should we say. Obviously, considering they've got a far bigger budget than most teams. And obviously, they had something massively to play for. So I think if we were 3-0 up on a lot of teams, probably would have won it quite comfortably. But the fact that it was them and the circumstances meant that obviously they knew they needed to get back into it. And look, we've seen it with Wales. Kiefer Moore is a real handful. If you do stick balls into the box, he does cause issues. And they had a lot of chances. It was frustrating. Don't get me wrong. You'd like to think we could have done better, but to an extent, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, look at the first goal. It's a decent ball in from a corner. I mean, Moore's above everybody else. We haven't got the height, have we? So that's a problem. I mean, the penalty is frustrating from Manning, really. But then, I mean, the 3rd goal, to be fair to Fisher, I thought he made a really good save. But then it was the follow-up, wasn't it? So, look, it was frustrating, but I do sort of understand what went on. But we've got to eradicate it either way next season. It's not going to be good enough, is it? We've got to make sure we strengthen the defence, because we can't be, that susceptible to balls in the box.
Do you know what I will say? And I completely agree with both of you about, accepting that the aerial difference was going to create a massive problem for us in that second half, which inevitably it did. But our defensive naivety, again, I mentioned it, for the Reading analysis, but this is something we were fully aware that we were going to go into that last 30 minutes, whatever it was, with no one above 6 foot tall, whatever at the back, against, Billing alone is 6'6", I think. So, you're going to have a big issue. You've got to stop those crosses coming in. So you talk about the corner. Kiefer Moore has a free run on our defence. As soon as he jumps, he's going to score. As soon as he jumps, he's going to score. So you don't let him start running. You can't let him start running when that cross comes in. You have to block his runs. So we didn't do that. The last goal, where Kiefer Moore ended up sticking the back of the net, we don't stop the cross. We don't get to him. And then you mentioned the penalty, the Manning situation. I mean, he's had a really poor second half of the season to me, Roy Manning, after being a player that was almost too good in two positions in the first half. We wanted him as a left centre back, then we wanted him on the left wing back, and we couldn't work out where best to utilise him because he was better than the options we had elsewhere. In the second half of the season, a little bit of a liability, if I'm honest with you. But that defensive naivety and not being streetwise is really quite frustrating because it's not a new theme, Guto, is it? I mean, we've sat on this podcast this season and talked about being so naive defensively. We talked a little bit earlier on about having to work so hard to score. And if I've said this once, I've probably said this 10 times in the podcast alone. We play a lot of high-risk, low-reward football. And it's great when it comes off, but if it doesn't, we inevitably concede. But when it follows a 20-25 passing move that ends up in the back of the net, you think, wow, this is complete football. And then we give the ball away 10 yards out, which the opposition just poke into the back of the net. It's a little bit frustrating, We can sometimes help our attacking players by not making them do double the work and conceding so many sloppy goals. And I think all of Bournemouth's goals ultimately were avoidable. I do accept Cabango was a massive miss, and as Steve mentioned, having the option of Bennett or even bringing Finley Burns on would have given us something rather than bringing on Corey Smith. But that said, defensively, I think we could have done a bit better on all.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I mean, talk about the defensive record, because actually this was our final point of the season, and it came at the end of a 9-game unbeaten run where we'd played some phenomenal attacking football, scored a ton of goals. And there's really been nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with our attacking play in that period. But at the back, we've thrown away some points. And just looking back over the entire season, more than a quarter of our games have seen us concede 3 or more goals. That's a lot. That, if you are conceding 3 or more goals in a quarter of your games, like you said, Matt, that puts so much pressure on your attackers then, and you're just not going to be able to win games when you concede 3 goals. It just can't happen, really.
Baffling though. We've had quite a lot of clean sheets, isn't it? About 15 or something.
It's when we concede, isn't it?
Yeah.
We collapse.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like there's not as many games there where it's like an in between of like only conceding 1 or something. We tend to concede, as you say, about 3. But considering that, we've had a lot of days where we've had clean sheets, and it is a bit baffling, isn't it?
And when we've played against the top team, so if you just look at the games we played against Fulham, we've conceded 8 goals against them this season, albeit one of those games, we were down to 10 men. But then you've got Bournemouth, who we conceded 7 against, and then you've got Forest, who we conceded 9 against. So, you add all of those up, and that's a huge amount of goals conceded to the top 3.
Like I mentioned Reading earlier, didn't I? Conceded 7 against them.
Yeah,
but more worrying because obviously at least the other 3 are good sides.
But what we've seen in those games and in so many others is when we've conceded 1, we've quickly gone on to concede 2, 3, and it's just the games run away from us very, very quickly because we've not had that discipline to just keep things tight after falling behind and keeping ourselves in the game. Sometimes we are a lot of the time we are just too loose, and we do invite too much pressure on ourselves needlessly. With poor game management. And our game management when we're trailing is appalling, if I'm being honest. It's absolutely rotten. That wasn't as much.
It's not great when we're winning. I mean, I sometimes think when we're winning games, I'm thinking, this should be... Well, we've obviously talked about Bournemouth here and Reading just before it, but These some games you just gotta kill the game. You've just got to go down, and the gamesmanship thing. You've got to be injured for 5 minutes. You've got to slow the pace down. You've got to let the ball roll out for a throw in.
Do what Real Madrid did against Man City.
Yeah,
basically.
You know what? Like, slow it down, because we're playing and we got 2-0 up, and you're like, great, and then you play frantic football. The opposition at that point, when they're 2-0 down, they want to play frantic football then. They want to keep it as open and wild as you can. We shouldn't be playing that game. We've got to control it. You spot on, Guto. It's game management. It really is. And it's just knowing the times in the games where you've just got to go, do you know what? They've had a couple of chances here now. So for the next 5-10 minutes, we're just going to kill the game. We're just going to slow it down, go down and whatever. And it's gamesmanship. And I think following from Cooper's tenure here, where we were very, very lucky, but also we had a very good gamesmanship. I thought we won a hell of a lot of points under Cooper where we should never have won. Sometimes people believe the fact that we nicknamed ourselves, didn't we, Shithouse FC at times, because we had no right or reason to go and win the game where we had won. But it was because we knew how to do it. We knew how to get in the opposition's faces. We knew how to slow the game and speed the game up, whatever. And I think when we've come away from that to go to a more fluid style of football, we've also brought that back in that little bit of naivety, which costs you points over a season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something all Swansea fans will be in agreement on. Let's just finish off this section by looking at the final two games of the season, which were disappointing, I think it's fair to say. First of all, boys, you two went up to Nottingham for the away game against Forest.
I didn't go. Just put
you didn't go.
I'm not going to take the credit for that, and I am very relieved that I didn't go.
He absolutely wanted to get on the record there that he wasn't there. He didn't want to be tarnished with that one.
Well, I mean, plenty of Swans fans did go up there, and I think we went up there more in hope than expectation anyway. But that hope, went out the window at some point, and it was another one of these games where, as soon as Forest did get a grip of things in the second half, it could have been absolutely anything, and it ended up being 5-1, which was embarrassing enough as it is, but. It could have been even more painful. It was that bad, really. And curse to the former player, Sam Surridge, coming back to punish us. It had all the makings of a bad day out, really, Matt. So what was it like in that away end to witness that kind of scoreline?
To be honest with you, two are probably better off analysing this than myself, because the second half goal fest happened at the other end of the stadium. In fact, all but one of the goals happened at the other end of the stadium to me. But it was a weird one, really, because the opening goal was celebrated more by the Swans fans than the Forest fans, because the circumstances behind Christie being an absolute idiot and trying to handle the ball on the line, and getting a red card and conceding a penalty. And thankfully, the ref was advised that it already crossed the line, so happy days. The Swans fans celebrated that we were playing the rest of the game with 11 men. We were probably going to concede the penalty anyway, so it wouldn't have made a difference. We would have definitely taken a hammer in otherwise, but it didn't seem to matter. My dad texted me at half-time and said, how's things? By the way, Sam Surridge is an absolute joke of a striker. He's useless. So naturally, I reminded him of that.
We can blame his dad for the second half, can we?
What's that?
We can blame your dad for the second half.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be fair, he probably should have had a hat-trick in the first half, but yeah, definitely blame him. I think he's jinxed us a little bit there. I did drop him. I think we left then at that point because we were 4-1 down. We were taking a bit of a pasting, and we didn't really fancy staying around for some Steve Cooper fist pumps, to be honest with you. It was. Away days are always good. The game's probably the worst part of an away day, but that said, I don't think we covered ourselves in a great deal of glory. But once again, we score a really good goal, and we score a good goal, and we concede so stupid goals that undo it all. And I think the goal, you can talk about it because you would have watched it probably more clearly than myself. But the build up to the goal, the pass, and the finish. thought they were great. I thought Obafemi, once again, you get him in those positions now, and you'd bet a fair bit of money on him sticking it away, and he did.
Yeah, it's when we go forward, we're absolutely stunning to watch. For the most part in the second half of the season, but at the back it is a recurring theme, isn't it? How awful we've been. It is laughable. And while there's no shame in losing to Steve Cooper's Forest this season. So many teams have done it. They're a very good team. You'd really back them to do well in the playoffs. But my God, we've made life easy for them too. And when you consider how his teams played when he was manager of Swansea, the thought of conceding 9 goals to a Steve Cooper team would have just been unthinkable back then, wouldn't it? So both games we've played against Forest this season have not reflected particularly well on us, I would say. Steve, just to finish off, I guess. What are your thoughts at the by now on kind of Steve Cooper? Because it's kind of split the fan base. Should we be kind of really begrudging of everything he does, and should we want Forest to mess it up in the playoffs just to spite him, etc.? Or do we say, well, fair play to him, it's obviously a better fit to Forest, and good luck to him?
Well, there was a couple of comments from him I didn't particularly like after the game. It was almost a bit like patronising, saying, "Oh, we knew Swansea would have loads of the ball," and I'm thinking to myself, like, well, when we appointed you, that was what we wanted. You were appointed on that basis, I would have thought. So it's almost like indicating it as like some sort of insult. And I'm thinking, does he really need to go down this type of route? I mean, look, I've said before, I think Steve Cooper was a little bit lucky with us. Like, there were a lot of games that we nicked where we didn't deserve, but obviously his record at Nottingham Forest is outrageous, really. I mean, if he had been in there from the start, it'd be tough to argue that they wouldn't be in the top 2. But I mean, Cooper did revert to type then against Bournemouth, where they sat deep, tried to frustrate and nick a goal, and it didn't work at all. So, that side of him is very much still in there somewhere. But look, I don't miss Steve Cooper. It's as simple as that, and that's not bitterness. It's just, I didn't enjoy it much. And I know, as you said, really, they definitely deserved to win this game. They were far better than us, but the game at the Liberty, they were lucky to win 4-1. Ben Hamer had
the ball in the net.
Yeah. Well, he was to blame for 3 of the 4 goals. And Perot, on a typically rare day where he gets an open goal, ended up bloody missing it at 0-0.
Yeah.
So, which is a typical instance of Steve Cooper, where these lucky things seem to happen on the day where his team are playing against a team who are usually good. So, it is what it is, isn't it? But I'm not convinced Forest will win the playoffs. I think Sheffield United that's a difficult game for them. So
a little bit of sweet irony, of course, was that Kiefer Moore, who got the late equaliser against us just a few days earlier, should have been sent off for an elbow on Flynn Downs. Yeah. Which you're all berating EFL. Why have they not reviewed this? Why have they not gone back and issued a retrospective 3-match ban? Well, you know what? He stopped Forest getting automatic, so maybe that's the yin and yang of the world sorting itself out.
And if there's one good thing to come out of that match, it's the fact that we won't have to face Bournemouth next season, which is a hell of a blessing, because I absolutely hate playing against them. I'm fed up of losing to them.
That's a fair point, isn't it? If you're going to surrender a 3-goal lead, it would be to them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's our record against them is so appalling. I absolutely hate playing against Bournemouth, and I'm glad they've been promoted just so that we don't have to face them again next season. Absolutely hate it every time we play them. Last game of the season, I don't really want to discuss this much because it was a flat end to the season. God, this was a difficult watch. Matt, I don't know. Should we be in any way
analysing it? No.
At least the second half was a little bit better than the first. The first was so bad, wasn't it?
Did you think the second half was better than the first? I don't know if it was.
I think we're starting from a very low base, mind. I mean, in terms of entertainment, there was a couple of extra chances I felt in the second, but it really was just one of those horrible end of season games where you felt like both teams were on the beach, wasn't it?
In fairness, I thought QPR were pretty decent and better than I expected them to be. They at least tried to play with a bit of energy, tried to pass the ball around sharply. I mean, the tempo was so low. The game was played at 2 miles an hour. I mean,
the ref
honestly,
was lapping our players, wasn't he?
Oh, it was just ridiculous. I mean, I think Fisher probably had about 20% of the possession, just the ball sitting by his feet, and him not doing anything with it. It was just everything we did was so slow, so tedious. It was, I mean, I know it was the final game of the season and there was nothing to play for, and I didn't really expect us to go hell for leather or anything like that. But still, it was like the most laid back kickabout in the park on a Saturday afternoon. There was just absolutely no intensity to Swansea's play whatsoever. I just couldn't get over how it looked like we'd taken a bunch of sleeping pills just before taking to the pitch. That's what it looked like. It was so low energy.
So I can't even remember anything to talk about. I know Perot got subbed, and I think he scuffed a few efforts where you thought he could have done a bit better. Talking earlier about him being, Russell Martin blamed the transfer speculation, but I think Russell Martin's peddling most of that transfer speculation at the moment. But I can remember their goal. But apart from that, Guto, I'm really struggling to remember much about the game at all. It was like you say, it was a non-entity. I think sometimes when you've got two mid-table teams like that at the end of the season, you do sometimes end up on the final day with a 4-3 or something like that, one of those crazy games. But it was the opposite end of season fixture where neither team were interested. Both teams were thinking about flying off on their holidays this week, and I think that translated to the stands, and there was very little in terms of atmosphere. Everything about the day, wasn't it? It was a bit flat, and it just felt like what we have for. Really, no one really felt like it was much intensity, as you say.
Yeah, even the kind of the end of season lap of honour, which is never well attended. It always looks ridiculous these days. I mean, there was just nobody left in the stadium to clap the players. It looked ridiculous. I genuinely think it's time for us to just finish that tradition. It's painful every time it happens.
Bring back the vet style pitch invasion. Bring back that, and then they can just come out in the director's box. It lasts for 5 minutes, and then it's done, isn't it?
Genuinely, that is so much better. I know, like, the Ospreys still had a game to play, so they probably wouldn't have enjoyed it. But
the good old days of that, the best used to be great.
Oh, it would give you something to look forward to at the end of the season. Even if the season was over and there was nothing to play for, you knew, okay, final whistle goes, we're all on the pitch, great stuff, hell of a laugh, everybody's happy. It's this business of
as well, Guto, it's the waiting between the full-time whistle and the.
Yeah, apparently that it wasn't like that Saturday. I can't comment.
But
apparently they didn't actually go off because sometimes they'll go off and they'll have a mother's meeting, take ages, and you're just like, look, just get on with it.
Yeah,
and then they bring in all their families on the pitch and stuff, and I get it. I get the thing behind it, but this can all be organised before the game, so it can all be like within 20 minutes of the full-time whistle going, everyone's done it. And like I say, I can't comment on this week's one, but in terms of generally speaking, you'd have to stay for another 45 minutes after the game to watch the lap of honour. And it's a lot of, before everyone starts walking on the pitch, there's a lot of players having selfies with their girlfriends on the halfway line and stuff like that, and it's a bit, I just really felt like, especially after the game it was against QPR, I think a lot of people just felt like, you know what, I'm gonna go back and carry on with my day, really, Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who would have maybe stayed, but have felt that they'd put themselves through enough watching 90 minutes of whatever that was.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
It was bizarre. Honestly, I think there were some players there who had more of a sweat walking around the pitch at the end than they did in the actual game itself. It was just, I don't, Steve, should we be like miffed at all that they put in such a terrible effort, or do you just say, do you know what, it's the final day of the season, who cares?
I think I'm more in the latter category, to be honest. I'm not going to waste energy getting annoyed over it. It wasn't great, and I think if I paid on the day to go to it, I wouldn't be very happy, but surely the walk-up was incredibly low on Saturday anyway. it's the last day. There's nothing.
I think you'll find the official attendance was 18,500.
Yeah. Okay. I'll yeah. But
it was definitely no more than 14,000 there, mate.
Oh no, there was a good crowd. There was a good crowd there.
It's just
it's a lot of holes.
Yeah, I think it was just one of them. We're thinking, let's just get this out of the way and let's go to the pub or something like that, and focus on next. I think the truth is, right, since the Cardiff game, it has felt like there's not really much left.
I was going to say that.
Everyone probably has felt the same because the season has been more or less over for months, really. It's just that the Cardiff game has loomed large over a long period because of the chance of the double, and obviously a derby game. It doesn't matter if there's anything on it. It's always about wanting to win anyway, isn't it? But I think
there were a few games where where after beating Millwall and Derby, you thought, okay, mathematically there is still a chance of making the playoffs. But
if every game was must win, you mean?
It pretty
much was silly points we dropped, wasn't it? The Reading, the Barnsley, the games there where you're just thinking that should have been, that's an extra 4 points we've left on the table there, which would have put us, I think, within a point of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Even if we'd won those games.
Yeah, I think that the problem was we knew that the margin for error was going to be quite small, and you're always thinking then, right, well, you could do it, but you always just think that you'll cock it up somewhere. Like I thought we'd actually beat Barnsley, beat Reading, and then it would have been on the table, and everyone would have started talking about it, and then I thought we'd have blown it. But obviously we didn't quite get that far. But I never felt for 1 minute we were going to get in the top six.
Yeah, I thought it would be very Swansea to kind of raise everybody's expectation levels and then dash them. But we didn't even bother raising the expectations.
It happened on the Porter, didn't it? I think we had a couple of wins at the end. And I remember then that I think a couple of the others dropped points. And we had 3 games left. And I think it was a case of, well, if we do win all 3, there would be an outside chance. But then I think we were 2-0 up on Hull, I think.
Yeah.
Come back to 2-2 and a couple of other results went against us. And we went, oh, well, that's it then. But again, I think it was always one of them that was felt, the chances were slim, weren't they? But, with that, when we did at least get into the point where, we were 3 games off it, whereas with this, I don't think we were ever that close, really, were we?
Just checking now, we finished a full 14 points and 18 goals worse off than 6th place. It's mad to think it dropped off that much, but the last...
But think of it like this, isn't it? But when we dropped 2 points against Barnsley and Reading, so that's 4. Then we drew with Middlesbrough, so that's 6 down. So what would that put us on to? Bournemouth, 8 down, and then the last 2, 14. So you think of it like that.
Yeah,
they really were all must win, weren't they? To get in there.
Yeah,
and so that would have meant 9 wins in a row, which we've done once in our entire history.
Yeah.
So we would never get in there, were we?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But still, a little bit of a flat end to the season, and it meant that, after 44 games, we were on the back of a 9-match winless streak. And by the 46th game, that had changed into a 6-game winless streak. That was from a 9-match unbeaten streak to a 6-match winless streak. It's weird how...
I love that point you make, because you can really make statistics fit whatever agenda you want, can't you? When we were championing the fact that we went on 9-match unbeaten run, it was like, there's a hell of a lot of draws in here.
I think the main thing with it was that we had drawn about 4 in a row. I think that was it. Whereas it wouldn't have been so bad if it was a bit more of a mix and match.
That's right.
And obviously the fact then that we were leading by 3 goals in 2 of them.
Yeah.
So then obviously you have drop points in it. So you are right, though. It's a funny one, isn't it?
As you say, even after dropping those silly 3 goals, we were on this. We still championed this unbeaten run after throwing away 2-3 goal leads in a week. But statistics, and you can make them look whatever way you want. And I think that was quite neat the way you summed it up there. We've gone from what looks like one fantastic run to, within the blink of an eye, one really worrying one.
But there we go. I think
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think the summer. Well, let's face it, we've been waiting for the summer to arrive for quite a few weeks now, and after an up and down season, the Swans finished with 61 points on the board, and that left us in 15th place in the championship, which We'll discuss it
I was
properly.
going to say, I do remember where you predicted.
Yeah, I'd say that was round about the spot, wasn't it?
I wouldn't be surprised if I actually predicted 15th, because I think
I think I said 16th, so obviously very close.
Yeah.
I think I predict 15th every single season. So, like when we were in the Prem, when we were in the Championship,
This will be
More
the season.
averages, you got it right.
Yeah, this will
once.
be the season he didn't.
yeah, but it's quite a safe thing to predict, isn't it? Because, like, you know, it's not in a relegation battle, it's not in a playoff place, and you're not going to look stupid at the end of the season, whichever way it goes. It's quite a safe, on the fence
Let's be honest, 15th
prediction.
has never been safer this season because obviously
There's
various points deductions and stuff. There hasn't been a hint of us going down, is there? At all, really.
Let's face it, we would have had to be absolutely rotten to go down this season if ever there was a
Cardiff have
season.
been pretty horrific, and even they have stayed up fairly comfortably in the end.
Yeah, very comfortably in the end, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the bottom end of the table sadly has been ruined by points deductions. The one stat I did love is that I think it was the Not the Top 20 podcast that pointed out Reading would have been closer to the relegation zone at the end of the season had there been. No, what was it? Yeah,
That points deduction, was it?
Yeah. Basically, the points deductions meant they actually finished further away from the relegation zone.
Oh yes, than if no one had one.
Yeah, than if nobody had one.
I'm with you.
Yeah, because Derby's was so drastic.
Well, Reading would have gone down, wouldn't they? Because Derby, like, obviously had 21 off, but they're only finished 7 behind them.
Would they have actually gone down? Wouldn't Birmingham have gone down?
No, they finished below Birmingham by 6 points.
Yeah, and the goal.
the balls, yeah.
But the goal difference for Reading is worse than
worse,
Birmingham.
yes, yeah,
so Reading would have gone down instead
of
of Birmingham on goal difference.
There you go.
And you know what? I've read a couple of days ago that Peterborough are holding out on Reading getting another points deduction for financial irregularity. So I don't know if this regular season is quite over yet, but we'll have to see what happens there.
And obviously Northampton are not happy with Scunthorpe.
Oh yes. Oh, can we do it on? But can we talk about another league?
Can we just extend our sympathies to Northampton Town at this difficult moment?
No, we absolutely cannot.
I'm going to extend them in the most ironic way possible. I think it's very rich of them to start complaining. Jesus Christ.
Do you know what? I absolutely love football fans because that was back in 1997, that match.
Never not make me bitter about that.
The playoff final back in 1997, you know, there's a quarter of a century's gone by. And still, the glee that Swansea City fans felt when Northampton somehow didn't go up on the final day of the season, despite winning 3-1. I mean, it sums up what's beautiful about football.
There's nothing like football grudge, is there?
People just do not forget. People absolutely do not forget. That was just slightly before my time supporting the Swans. I didn't start supporting us until John Hollins came along. So I have no memory of that playoff final. Obviously, I know what happened, but I don't have that kind of same emotional baggage. Whereas, you know, if Barnsley, for example, were in the same situation, I would take the same kind of glee because my most painful memory as a Swansea fan was the 2005 playoff final when they knocked us out on penalties. And even though we've not lost to Barnsley since then, that match still causes me an immense amount of pain. So
did you know we haven't lost to Barnsley in 90 minutes since the 80s?
Yeah, but obviously
it's bizarre then. They obviously that one they've got over us, haven't they?
Is the biggest match that we've played against them. So
you know, someone who got off scot-free on the Northampton story was Freddie Woodman.
Yeah,
you know, his dad
was the goalkeeper, wasn't he?
His dad was the goal for Northampton that day.
Yeah.
And he never really got to take much stick for that.
I think it did get mentioned once or twice to this.
Let me see. If John Frayne's son came down to play, you would have a problem with it.
But he wouldn't be coming in it. I can tell you right now. But I think probably for me and Matt, it's more of a raw thing because I hadn't been going very long at that point. And obviously, I was only about 9 years old. It's a big day out at Wembley, and obviously lost in the last minute. And then, from my point of view, the bus broke down after it. So then it adds to the misery, doesn't it? It's just complete.
I swear, back in the day, every single Swans bus used to break down on the way to or back from a match.
Yeah. I think on this occasion, the dickhead had left the bloody lights on, so a flat battery. So they know it break down. It was an absolute mong, isn't it?
Oh, boy.
So then obviously we had all the Northampton fans coming out celebrating and just like, you just want the ground to swallow you up, didn't you?
Oh, there's nothing worse than losing the playoff final, unless
Wembley's only a place for winners, isn't it? They say that, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, because it's probably been worse, isn't it? Like, you always think the Man City one always sounds insane, doesn't it? Where they played Gillingham, didn't they? A couple of them left because they were 2 down, and they've scored 2 at the end. And you just think, if you're a Gillingham fan, I don't know how you get over that. Yeah. I bet Gillingham. Like if Man City were
the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I bet they're watching this now, right? Because obviously we're watching Villa Liverpool.
There's a lot of Liverpool fans in Gillingham right now.
Yeah, Gillingham. They're all praying for Liverpool to win. It's probably a lifelong grudge, isn't it?
The pubs in Gillingham were absolutely landed when Real Madrid did the comeback the other day.
Yeah, there probably was a few grins there, wasn't there?
You could post that online and no one would get the link because that is just such an obscure kind of like grudge, isn't it? Gillingham.
I bet you as well the way some some football fans are so like one-eyed about these things. I bet you out there are some Gillingham fans who think, oh, if only we'd won that playoffs, it would be us that would have got the oil money and it would be us in the Champions League.
With the butterfly effect.
Yeah. The funny thing is, we're saying this like. I've always been convinced that Huddersfield have got something against us for the autographs. Because every time I've been there, I've found them to be not the nicest of people.
And what's his name? Peter Jackson hated the trundle shoulder roll.
Peter Jackson hated us.
And they were just horrible bastards.
Yeah, so I'm not convinced that we may be the other way then. It's that Huddersfield have got
but then
an issue
you won't tell me here, sitting here right now, you won't tell me you don't hate Huddersfield as well.
No, I think it's because they hate us basically. True. So it's forced me into my hand. But look at something like Reading. I mean, I don't think they seem to have a grudge with us, do they?
I don't know. I think they were really sick of playing us. I think because they never beat us.
I think that's probably a different thing, isn't it? As opposed to obviously the playoff final, isn't it?
But Reading aren't really proper football fans, are they? They're very posh, very sweet. They
probably like a good cheese board like Fulham do, don't they?
Yeah, but Fulham have a bit of charm about them and a bit of it's genuine. With Reading, there's just nothing to the club. I hate it as an away day as well. Like the Madejski Stadium is just off the M4. There's nothing anywhere near it. It's a wasteland. The stadium itself is a vacuum. There's no atmosphere there. I've never liked Reading. I'm sorry. I mean, nothing like. It's not that I kind of hate them and there's something really detestable about them or anything like that. There's just nothing to them. They are a club without the personality. They're just a bunch of. They're just a very middle class club that you can't really feel anything towards. Really, there's just nothing to them. I
don't think their fans do either, do they? I know before our time there was the famous the fights and the hooliganism.
There's that game in '93. There's loads of YouTube clips of it, isn't it? It looks wild.
But since that's died out and the Madejski move and stuff like that from Elm Park, so when they moved, look where they come at now. I can't even see any element of their fans being that passionate about them. I don't think they are. I know there've been movements with them to try and create an atmosphere and some sort of passion in that stadium. But I think the whole fan base has just given up on that club.
Like you say, it's just a very middle class Tory, I don't even know what else to say. I mean, I don't think there's the passionate hatred, as you say, Guto, but I think there's just, from my point of view, it's just I'd hate to be them. That's the best way of describing it. I have a particular contempt towards that kind of club, which just has nothing about it at all. We can have a discussion about what is the most vanilla football club out there. The kind of club that there's just nothing about. Another key element for me of a vanilla club would be if you don't have an arch rival.
Yeah. In fairness, I think Gillingham are a bit like that, aren't they? They don't have any.
Gillingham have got an issue with Swindon for some reason, haven't they?
That's a weird one. Bournemouth, though, that's another vanilla club.
They've sprung to mind, they did. Because obviously they think they've got one with Southampton, but we know that for Southampton, it's obviously Portsmouth.
They're miles apart. They're not actually, I mean, like, they're on the south coast, but they're quite far apart. I mean, until, I don't know, Salisbury get promoted to the same level, Bournemouth aren't going to have a derby. And it's just, again, it's a tiny stadium without much atmosphere. It's not even in Bournemouth itself. It's in Boscombe, I think. So
that's right.
There's nothing much around it. There's no real personality to the place. I think it's very hard.
I love how this podcast has gone off. There's another conversation to be had as well, actually, about the parachute payments with Bournemouth and Fulham going back up straight away, and how boring. You had a stat about Fulham and Norwich.
Yeah, Fulham and Norwich. I'm playing each other since 2017, and then each season since they've either gone up or down, and they've only been one league apart.
I mean, it's awful for football, but it's a brilliant stat.
It's something that, okay, your clubs will go to the wall if you get rid of parachute payments. There needs to be a more refined way of looking at it, but the way it's working at the moment, Premier League fans don't want to see the same teams getting promoted every year. Championship clubs have all the hope sapped out of them because you're looking at the teams coming down now and go, well, they're going to improve. They're going to spend a bit of money in the summer. That's your top 3 or 4 roles, there.
It sickens me because you have to give credit to someone like Brentford, and obviously we don't like them very much either, do we? Or we certainly don't like the manager, shall we say?
Yeah.
So, but they managed to buck the trend through, good planning over a period of time and a good strategy, really. But I mean, we're slagging loads of things off here, but we haven't even got on to MK Dons yet.
Do you know what? We need to get a follow-up pod just to have a vent those spleens about all the things in football that really grind our gears. We'll have to arrange that some
all day.
We can ask people to contribute to that as well.
Yeah, think random things in football we despise.
There's definitely a poll coming up on.
So this is a chance to really go on about must win, then, isn't it?
Oh, don't. Right. Well, now that you've said must win, we're moving on. We're leaving it behind.
You've killed it. Well done.
Yeah. Cheers, Steve. That was a good conversation until he brought that up. We had we're moving on now to the most boring aspect of football, and that is the transfer window. Absolutely hate them, mind-numbing tedium, repeated nonsense rumours. But let's start off with, we're not going to go in too deep with the kind of players that we can expect to lose this summer and the kind of players we need. But we're just going to have a quick word about a couple of players that are leaving or extremely likely anyway to leave this summer. We'll start off with confirmed departures in Corey Smith and Hamer. I mean, two players who've had a bit of first team action this season, Matt, but they've I think as the season worn on, their influence has waned, and as their contracts came to an end, is it any surprise, do you think, that both of these players are moving on?
Do you know, if I'm honest, only in the last couple of weeks ago or so would I have said that it doesn't look like Smith is getting one. At one point, I thought he must have had compromising photos of Russell Martin on his laptop or something, because he was getting picked left, and anyone who got injured, Corey Smith, come on, he even saw it against Bournemouth, Ben Cabango goes off, he's probably looked at his bench and going, right, my 6'2" centre-half has gone off against the biggest team in the division. Corey, get on there, my friend. Literally, I would have thought, this guy is going to get a new deal here, and it's not to be. And to be honest, I think it's the right decision. He's not the makeup of a sort of player we need going forward. If we're going to make this work and be a success, he's very limited in what he can do. And I think in his first season here, he's obviously had a bit more of a run influence and stuff like that, and he had a good defensive midfield displays. But in this spell towards the end of the season, you could just see more and more where his weaknesses lied and how he couldn't really offer anything in any sort of attacking capacity. And there are just better players than him there. Ben Hamer, him I'm not surprised with. We've kind of been the worst secret ever that we've been in for another goalkeeper this summer, so it was obvious that he was going to have to make way. And it does look ominous as well for Stephen Bender, who I think has probably reached the end of his line here, which personally I think that's a shame, but then I know there's a lot of conflicting views on him as well, because there's Andy Fisher, who in himself, Guto, is quite a divisive figure. I mean, you love him or hate him, he's like a Marmite figure. And like so many goalkeepers you see it in the Premier League, and like you can think of the likes of like the Claudio Bravos at Man City when he was there, and you just think, right, this guy can play football, but can he save a shot? Can he claim a cross? He's made a couple of good saves in the last couple of games, to credit him, but I'm undecided on our current number one, and I wouldn't be against us going into the market for someone who is genuinely going to compete for that jersey.
I thought you were going to say that for somebody who's genuinely a good goalkeeper.
Tell me now, I'm not going to hide that. Yeah, definitely, I would. But look, I don't know with him if it's something that's going to come good or he needs a better goalkeeping coach or whatnot. Sorry, Dean Thornton. But what's going on there? But like, he doesn't come for crosses. He doesn't command his area. He doesn't look like the defence necessarily have the sort of confidence in him to allow him to marshal the area behind him, which is a big problem when your game is all built on coming out from the back and having all the ball building out from the back line. So, and listen, I'm not going to go into my rant on goal kicks and the short goal kick fiasco tonight, but that's another thing. We can save that for that pod on things that are not.
Do you know what? I think that's the one thing that all Swansea fans do agree on, though, is that I just don't get it. I don't get why we keep doing that every single goal kick.
There's so little to gain and so much to lose.
It's like everything we do is the high risk, low reward. There's no reason but the thing is as well, it's not as if it's come straight off the training ground where you can say, oh, see, you've pushed me into this rant now, Guto, for God's sake. It's pushed me into the position where you get the ball then with Fisher 35 yards out, but none of the other players have moved. So he's still putting the ball into the midfield area, which he could have done from the goal kick. It doesn't matter. No, we haven't gained anything. It just seems that we're just asking for trouble. But anyway, move me away from that. No, in the end, I didn't expect either to be given new contracts. Corey Smith was probably the more likely of the two. But yeah, we wish them well. They've obviously got a year or two left in the game, both of them at this point. So they'll hopefully find new clubs. But I think the time was right for both.
And Steve, a couple of loanees as well have obviously come to the end of their short-term deals. So Hannes Wolf, Cyrus Christie and Freddie Burns all returning to their parent clubs. How would you kind of measure their contributions during the second half of the season?
But Burns I'll go with first because this was the most minimal, I suppose. Never really had much of a chance, did he? So, he's not going to be back, is he? So he probably won't be missed. But at the same time, we didn't really see enough of him to form a clear opinion. I think Christie's done well in patches. He's been caught out at other times. I mean, I don't know if we're going to see him again. The impression I'm getting is that we won't, if I'm honest. And I think that's our decision as opposed to his. So, I think signing him would be a reasonable one. I'm not sure I'd want him to be maybe first choice, if I'm honest. I'm not sure if he gets up and down enough, but look, it wouldn't be a bad signing, I don't think, either, if he came in. I think Wolf would be a loss. I mean, he's done really well as that wing back, obviously in a position that we've really needed, haven't we? And it's a bit of a shame in some ways, though, that we didn't have someone that could play there, and he could have played further forward, which I think is his general position. But I mean, I think it would be a good thing if he came back, definitely. But he's got a year left in his contract. I mean, I can't see Mönchengladbach being willing to loan him out unless it's a last resort, really. So I'd have thought they'd want to sell him and recoup some money rather than loan him out and let him go for free. So, we'll see. But I mean, in terms of the other guys you mentioned, I mean, I think Smith and Hamer, I think they've done okay for us, haven't they? But I don't think they're really long-term answers. So I'm not too sorry to see them go. But I wish them both well. I think they're good professionals, and I think they both will probably end up in the same division as us. And they'll get reasonable moves out of it, but they're just not right for our style of play, I don't think. So, it makes sense then to move them on and look to bring others in.
Yeah. Matt, what's your opinion on the three loanees there? Do you think there's any chance we'll see any of them next season?
I guess it depends what happens with Pirot. I think any funding we're going to do this summer and wages as well as transfer fees is going to depend on bringing in a lot of money. One thing we're not going to go into detail on in this pod, I don't think we are anyway, is the accounts. Them being come out and saying that we have made losses, which I suppose is to be expected. But does goes to show that this is why we have to live with this kind of selling an asset every summer at the moment until we find that steady ground where we can be self-sustaining, which is the model which we've been talking about for years, and obviously we've had to get back to it since relegation, and we've taken a massive sting over the last, what is it now? It's 4 years now, isn't it? We've been down.
This is the fourth season.
Yeah, so I mean, considering it's taken us 4 years to get to a site where we're not actually really at death's door, if you like, with football. But at the same point, we're still going to have to sell Pirot, I think, if we're going to fund these sorts of moves in the summer. So Wolf, I think, is the one. If we were going to bring someone back, who I'd like to see, I really would. I think he's, and his agent has spoken so highly as well of his time down here, how he's, the atmosphere, and he's loved being around in front of the Swans fans. Now they've taken to him, and he's enjoyed his football. So everything sounds great, but you have to come down to the basic in football, which is the finances, which is going to dictate. And at the moment, it sounds like we aren't playing the same game as other clubs. We can't play those games with the money, and so we're gonna have to shop in a smaller market. But yeah, Finley Burns, that seems like another wasted loan. Nothing much happened there with him. He didn't get many opportunities, and never really necessarily took them with both hands when he did. And Cyrus Christie. I mean, again, he's another one that you perhaps say, I'd like to bring him in because we need someone there. But could we get someone better, someone younger, someone fitter? Maybe. I'm not ruling that out, and maybe someone cheaper as well, which is good. What it's all going to matter about, really. But yeah, of the three, I'd say Wolf, then Christie, then Burns is my preference, but Wolf would be the top.
Yeah, I struggle to see. I take, in terms of likelihood of players coming back, possibly Freddie Burns is in a kind of Mark Gehey type of scenario where he's maybe taking a bit of time to settle in, and they want to give him another year, but I can't really see that happening because he's had so little football and hasn't been on the bench even recently. And then the other two, I think they've done very well for us in the second half of the season. I've really liked both of them. But Wolf was bought for a lot of money by Gladbach. I cannot see them, either selling him on the cheap or sending him back on loan. Surely sending him to us on loan was a way of trying to get him back up to the standard they require. They've had a difficult season, so he may be a bit more used for them next season. And then Christie, I would have liked to have thought that Christie could have come here, that his contract comes to an end at Fulham and he'd want to stay somewhere where he's had quite a bit of joy, but the indications are that that's not going to be the case, which is a bit of a shame. But there are other players out there that we can go after other than him. But I think both he and Wolf have done well for us, and hopefully they've enjoyed their time here. We won't go into too much about who we need to bring in or what are the kind of players that we should be looking at, etc. But there is one player whose name has come up since the final game of the season, which we just have to discuss because it's a player that we have discussed for years upon years upon years. We've said for so long that we'd like to see him come back. And after the QPR game, a story broke online that the Swans are interested, confirmed interest in the one and only Joe Allen, the Pembrokeshire Pillow. Steve, what were your initial reactions when you heard about this?
I think it's a good thing. Now, it's not the biggest priority this summer. He is on free transfer. He suits our style of play. The wages should be reasonable. If that all is the case, then it's a no-brainer for me. Get him in. I mean, it would be a really good signing, I think. We do need to sign a central midfield player now that Smith has gone. And him on a free, well, yes, as far as I'm concerned, definitely a move that we should make. Like I said, we have got other priorities defensively, especially, I would say, and depending on who goes and certain replacements. But we do need to bring in a central midfield player. And Joe Allen's available. I'm sure he wants to come. It's on a free. The wages are reasonable. I don't see what the issue is there. Absolute no-brainer.
Matt, he's been on quite sizable wages at Stoke. Would he come here to well, first of all, do you think he would be a starter if we did buy Joe Allen, assuming that we keep hold of Flynn Downs and Matt Grimes? Because I posted a tweet over the weekend and I was pretty shocked at some of the reaction people had to me stating that I felt it was a no-brainer that Downs and Grimes were better than Joe Allen by now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think if Joe Allen comes here, he comes here as a squad player. There will be gaps to fill, as Steve said, in midfield. I'm probably not quite as enthusiastic as Steve on the potential of signing him. I think the numbers have to be right. I don't think we can make him a marquee signing. We can't go and bring him and put him at the top end of our wage budget. And I don't mean blow our wage budget. I just wouldn't have him in amongst the top 3 earners at the club, full stop, at this point, because A, we're working on a very limited budget and it's an area of the pitch which shouldn't be addressed first anyway. And B, there's little... there's no resale value with him. There's no, he's going to finish if he wants to come here and finish his career and do the boyhood thing of coming back to his club and seeing out his days here, fantastic. I'm all for it, as long as we can make it work. And it would need to be on very modest wages, certainly a fraction of what he's earning at Stoke. Yeah, I would think if those two situations don't cause an issue and he's made his millions and he's happy, he just really wants to finish his season here, then yeah, I've absolutely got nothing against it, because as someone who's going to come in when a player's picked up a knock or a suspension or coming off the bench and stuff like that, I think fantastic, and he'd be a great option. I'm just concerned about a little bit from some of the Swans fans on the clamour for it would have meant to me that they would have been happy for us to push the boat out for him, and I'm not quite there on that one, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, my initial reaction was kind of rose-tinted excitement, because I love Joe Allen. I've always loved Joe Allen. I loved him when he played for us. I've always loved him when he plays for Wales. Love the way he plays, loves the spirit with which he plays. One of my favourite footballers. Absolutely love him. Having said that, I asked myself the question, why are we going after Joe Allen? Are we going after him to be a starter, in which case, does that mean that we're losing one of Matt Grimes or more likely possibly Flynn Downs? If that's the case, then that's not good news, because I think they're two very, very good players, and in Flynn Downs especially, there's a player there whose value is going to only rise and rise and rise if he stays here, and who could become a really fantastic player in the years to come. And I'm also wondering about kind of the cash involved, because we know what the finances are like. The accounts were published the other day. We'll discuss those in more length, I think, when we look at the season review and look at the players that we may want to bring in over the summer. But budgets are tight and the margins are tight, and that's the same for the vast majority of clubs in the Championship. We're no different to that, but we're a club that only has a finite amount of money to work with. We're going to have to sell players before we can buy, etc. So there isn't an unlimited pot there, and you have to prioritise signings. And I'm just wondering, are we prioritising Joe Allen ahead of other positions? And possibly enough that we're not, and that he's taking a big wage cut, and that it fits in quite easily with the structure. In which case, I have no problem. And if Joe Allen is coming here to be a squad player behind Downs and Grimes, then again, that's a phenomenal signing, because you won't get much better backup players in those positions, and he would fit this system to a T, an absolutely perfect fit for this system, really. But when I said that, Allen was not as good as what we already have in midfield, there were some fans who just didn't get what I was trying to say there. And basically, those people haven't watched enough of Joe Allen in recent years. He's not the same player that we had before. He's not the same player that was playing for Wales in 2016. He's 32-year-old Joe Allen, who's recently had a very serious injury. I think even when you see him play for Wales, he's not got that same dynamism and that same ability to kind of do the work of two men and control midfield the way he used to. He's still a good player, no doubt about it. And if we get him, he'd still be a really positive contributor to this side, but he's not one of the best midfielders in the Championship anymore. So I think expectations would need to be kind of positioned rightly if we were to buy him. I think it has the potential to be a very good signing, but I'm just worried that bringing in Joe Allen would mean kind of losing another midfielder, and I'd hope that we weren't kind of doing a Ryan Bennett really and making a player in his 30s one of our top earners when, as one of you pointed out there, there's very little sell-on value. We've had a lot of success over the last few years buying young players and developing them into, this season specifically then, but buying young players and developing them into very good players who we could sell on for a big profit. I think that's the main strategy we need to use. There may be room for one Joe Allen in that system, but we shouldn't be making too many signings like that, is what I would say. But it's a really interesting one. It has a lot of sentimental value, and obviously, that it makes footballing sense on many levels as well. I just want to wait and see kind of in what context we're buying him first. That's my reaction. I don't know, Steve, if you've got anything to add to that or any other kind of opinions.
Well, I am thinking in the same way. I mean, I'm treating it as he's coming in. It'll be, we're not going to make him necessarily one of the top earners. The fact is, I mean, look, he's been on a really good contract, I'd have thought, at Stoke, that he signed just after they got relegated. The landscape in football has changed since COVID outside the top division, really. I just think there isn't as much money there. Stoke could probably still afford to pay him more than we could, but I don't think he'd be coming down here on a crazy contract. And like I said, not necessarily going to be first choice either. But the fact is, I mean, I know Grimes has played every minute of every game this season, but you can't necessarily expect that all the time. And the same with Downs. And I mean, like I say, he's better than Smith. Is he better than Fulton? I would say so, yes. So, but for me, I think, as you say, we have got other priorities, and they should remain the bigger priority. So we don't want to go below in the budget on this deal necessarily. And I also do agree that, bringing in up-and-coming players that you can sell on for resale value in general, that is the way to go. But there is always room for the odd exception. I think that it's always good to have some experience. And you think someone like Bennett now is in here, he's going to be going. I mean, Norton has been offered a new deal, hasn't he? And I'm sure nobody's disagreeing with that. So, I think it's always good to have a bit of a blend, isn't it? And I think Joe Allen would be a good one in that sense. I mean, like I say, it's you just don't want to go over the top with it. That's all. But I mean, we've seen a lot of ex-players come back here, haven't we? And I think we've criticised a lot of the deals. But I mean, realistically, this one, it's on a free, as long as the wages are reasonable. It's pretty low risk, really, isn't it? And as we've said, he suits us. So I think this is one where it would make sense to bring him an ex-player back, whereas a lot of the other ones, the alarm bells should have been ringing that it wasn't necessarily a good deal for the club, and most of the ones that we have brought back in recent years, they've not really worked, have they? But they can work in other circumstances. I mean, Leon Britton coming back was an inspired move, for example, wasn't it? So, you've got to judge every deal, I think, on its merits, and I think, in the right circumstances, there's certainly a lot of positives to bringing Joe Allen back to the Swans. I think
statistically as well, I think to be fair to him, he's still posting good numbers. I think he's one of the highest number of interceptions in the Championship this season as well. I think that was posted a couple of days ago. So to me, it all boils down to not whether Joe Allen necessarily is good enough, but it's whether that big stumbling block for me is the money. He is on massive wages, and he would need to just almost just say to us, Martin, look, the money isn't the issue. Can I come home? Would have to be the nature of the conversation, And if the answer is yes, then as Steve said, is he a better option than Coley Smith and Jay Fulton? Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure Swans fans obviously will welcome him back with open arms. But as long as it works for the club financially, and we don't put him in our top earners, then let's do it. But as you say, Guto, we wait and see what sort of mentality Russell Martin is, because we're hoping he's just an option that is available, that we're keeping an eye on and keeping tabs on and talking to the player about, rather than all eggs in that basket. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way to put it. And let's face it, if Joe Allen was to come back to the club, I think we'd all be very excited. He's still a good player, and he embodies just the way that we do want to see our football played. And it's I think that, Steve, that you said we've had a lot of ex-players come back, and there are some fans who would say, oh, you should never go back. And like you said, we went back for Leon and it worked out very well. We went back for Gylfi Sigurdsson and it worked out very well. So it's not that necessarily going back for the same players is a bad thing, but we have made bad ones in the past. I don't think Joe Allen would fit into that category. I think he would be a good addition to the squad if he was to come back. It's not kind of another injury-prone Wilfred Boney or Andre Ayew on a crippling wage. It would be.
Like you said, you just got to judge on his merits, don't you? Like you mentioned Sigurdsson there, for example, and the fact is because he failed at Spurs, you're thinking, well, that doesn't mean he'd be a bad signing for us, does it? The question boils down to quite often, like when Boney was at Stoke and Berahino and Crouch were keeping him out of the team, there should have been massive alarm bells ringing that this guy maybe isn't that good anymore. And the fact is they weren't with us. So I think that's the concerns that there's been, isn't there, with a lot of the ex-players. But I mean, it can work. I mean, the previous generations will tell you that Alan Curtis had 3 spells, particularly the second one was obviously when we were in the first division, and that was brilliant. So, it's this thing of never going back, I think, is a lot of that is crap.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, Joe Allen hopefully won't be the only incoming if he does arrive here. And there's been a bit of a change behind the scenes in terms of who's going to be doing the scouting and who's going to be in charge of our recruitment, because quite surprisingly, Steve, Mark Allen has departed the club, which came out the blue really a couple of weeks back, and was quite a shock to a lot of people, because it seemed from the outside anyway as though he was going to be a big player in the summer to come. I mean, I think we were all shocked, weren't we?
Yeah, I mean, there's something's gone on there, isn't it? I mean, I was at the fans forum in Port Talbot the other week, and him and Russell Martin were there. They were giving us, they were discussing various things. They had a presentation, and it was quite impressive. And we could tell they seemed to have a real plan about what was going to happen over the summer. And less than 2 weeks later, Mark Allen is gone, and it is a shock. I mean, you wonder was something happened in terms of has he been tapped up by somebody, or maybe they're unhappy with some of the deals that we've done. I mean, you look at Ogbeta and Burns, for example, they're both with Man City links, which is where Mark Allen has worked before, and you'd have to say maybe they haven't worked, and maybe they're just not happy with his performance in the job, and have looked at it and thought, right, well, if we're not happy with some of the players that have come in here, then they don't trust him to do the job in the summer. I mean, we're speculating, aren't we? We don't know is the honest answer, but I mean, it was certainly a surprise, wasn't it? And timing not really ideal just before the summer, and hopefully, well, it doesn't derail any of our plans really, because obviously it is going to be another big summer for us.
Yeah, and Matt, one of the names that's just today been linked with the job on Twitter. Don't know how credible this link is yet, but it's an interesting name. Rob Scott at Rotherham. It wouldn't be the first Scott to hold this position at the club, because he's the brother of Andy Scott, who worked very closely with Steve Cooper during his time here. What were your kind of initial thoughts when you heard that name mentioned?
Well, it's a small world, isn't it? We shipped someone out a couple of months ago, and then the kind of summer we're looking at his brother. So I'm not sure what sort of reference Andy Scott will give the Swans to his brother, but I think the whole situation is a little bit odd, isn't it? I mean, Julian Winter can tell me all day and night that this is all part of a strategic rebuild and whatnot, but from my point of view, there's more to it. There's got to be more to it, that we ripped up our recruitment strategy to put Mark Allen in charge of it, only a few months ago. And like Steve said, going to fan presentations and talking about the recruitment strategy. So for the club to turn around and, put him on gardening leave just a week or so after that feels very much like there's been an incident or a revelation or some sort of something's happened, I think, that has caused this, which I can only, speculate. And as someone who doesn't know what's happened. But I can't buy the fact that this is just all part of what's going on. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something else going on we probably will never find out about. But the way these things work these days with contracts and whatnot, and and NDAs and stuff. But from my point of view, there's something going on, and we'll see how the dust settles, because I guess football's a little bit of a smaller world behind the scenes, and people do talk, and people do know what's going on behind the scenes at certain clubs and stuff, and ex-employees will speak. So I'm sure that if there's any doubts in Rob Scott, is that his name?
Yeah,
Rob Scott's mind, then we'll find out when that link falls flat on his face. But he's had it looks like he's had a good spell at Rotherham and been involved in some important signings, and in fact worked at Brentford some time ago, involved in some of their big signings as well, the ones that they've now shipped off for 15-20 million a piece, so from that point of view, it certainly looks like something not to be sniffed at. And we were all maybe secretly hoping that we'd nick the MK Dons sporting director, weren't we? Just to rub salt in the wound. And we know the link there with Russell Martin.
Well, until the position's filled, never rule it out.
What's his
And
name?
obviously,
Liam Sweetin. Yeah.
But don't forget, obviously, MK Dons are not going up now either. So
no,
the chances of changes there are probably higher now that we know who will be in a higher division than them. So we'll see.
Yeah.
If there's one club where you want to rub salt in wounds after a playoff defeat, it's the MK Dons, isn't it? Let's face it.
Well, the thing is, you can steal no matter anything from MK Dons, and you can just turn around and say you stole the football club. So literally, it doesn't matter what you do; you can get away with anything.
It's true. You'll always have the moral high ground over a club that's stolen other places' football club.
There'll be players available there. So I think the main one, like the Scott Twine, whatever, I think it'd be out of our pay options, but our budget. But we know Russell Martin's a big fan of Harry Darling, and we were talking at length about our lack of height at centre half and our lack of imposing footballers at centre half as well.
This guy fits. We're bound to get linked to a few of those guys, aren't we?
He fits the bill.
That's fairly obvious.
I think we're going to be linked with half the MK Dons squad. I think any MK Dons players we are linked to, I think we should take it with a pinch of salt, really, shouldn't we? For the time being, until there's kind of credible links. But there we go. The summer has started. We can look forward to a lot of transfer rumours in the weeks to come. Just please remember, don't overreact to any one rumour. Wait until it's credible. It's tedious enough as it is. Anyway, sorry for the extra long podcast, but we had a lot to catch up on. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. Tune in soon when we will be looking back at the season as a whole and looking forward to the transfer window and asking who exactly we need to improve the squad. But until then, thank you very much for listening.